Alright, we have this candidate coming in, Kevin Robinson, and we're interviewing him for our 8th grade US history team. He's got a background in social studies, clearly we want that certification, prepped and ready. But let's go ahead and take a few minutes and just look over his resume. Make a list of questions that we're wanting to know more about, hopefully he touches on, and if he doesn't, we can ask him questions about it. And then just things that we like that we already see on this resume. Alright, what did you notice from his resume?
I noticed that he's worked at a few of our neighboring school districts. Noticed that it only took him a year for his master's, so maybe I'll ask him about that. But, what did you notice?
I also noticed the neighboring districts. I think that's great. He'll know the surrounding communities, some of the experiences our students may have in their prior knowledge. Also the diversity of the districts he's coming from, the campuses that he served at. I think that will serve him well in our student populations. And I also noticed that he sponsored some clubs and organizations at previous campuses. So I'm thinking that that means not only is he here to instruct, but he's here to build relationships with the community and other teachers and really invest in our campus as a whole picture, which I think is going to be potentially an asset to us. I also, his experience with being a substitute teacher, in addition to then going into education, bodes well for classroom management. That he was a sub and then found his way into the classroom, wasn't scared off by student behavior or anything. And I love this one, always looking forward to learning more and to grow as a person.
It really shows that growth mindset.
Absolutely. Alright. So that's just off the resume. So I handed you your interview questions there. There are standard questions for social studies. We're gonna just take turns. We know this. I'll explain it to him once I bring him in. And then at the end, we'll provide him time to ask us questions that he may have. I'll go over our timeline once all those questions are wrapped up. And then we'll debrief on the notes that we've taken. Remember that any notes we take on these documents are subject to open records. And just keep in mind our US history team that we have currently, the 2 members that he could be partnering with, and see kind of what he might complement or really bring out in the teachers we already have that will serve our campus well overall.
Alrighty, will do.
Alright, let's go grab it. Mr. Robinson?
Alright,
Hi, nice to meet you.
good to meet you.
Sarah Songco, I'm the campus principal. can go ahead and take a seat here.
Okay.
This is Mr. Salerno, our assistant principal.
Hi, nice to meet you. Thank you for coming in today.
Of course.
We really appreciate your time, and we're excited to get to know more about you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We are interviewing for that U.S. History 8th grade team position. Just want to make sure that we're all clear on that position. Okay. How it's going to go, just the structure, so that you know what you're kind of walking into. We'll take turns asking some scripted questions.
Okay.
You'll share with us a little bit more about your perspective through those questions. At the end, if we have any follow-up questions that we want to know more about, we'll ask those, and then we'll turn the floor over to you.
Okay.
And you'll be able to ask us questions about the culture of our campus, ways we can support you, things like that. And then once we wrap up that, I'll share our timeline and all of that piece, and then we'll respect your time and get you to the rest of your day.
Alrighty, sounds good.
Okay. Ready to get started?
Of course.
Perfect. Tell us a little about yourself. What makes you a good educator, and why are you interested in Anywhere Middle School?
Okay. So first off, my name is Kevin Robinson. Graduated from the University of Texas at Arlington. I've been in education for about, I think, 6 years now, I believe. One reason or purpose, I guess, as to why I think I'm a good educator is just the sincere passion that I have for education. When I was in college, I started off as a nursing major, if you can believe it. And I really didn't like it. And so my freshman year, I switched it to political science, because those were the classes that I enjoyed the most, mainly because of my professors. They made the class more interesting, made it more engaging, and it really broadened my mind to the world. And so I think it was around my junior year of college when I realized that I wanted to, in a sense, do the same thing, but I think it was more to inspire others. And I think education was the best pathway to do that, right? Because I'm able to interact with a wide variety of people every single day, and they grow up to be amazing human beings. And I don't necessarily even know it. I think that's just kind of one of the coolest things about being an educator, that it is a thankless profession that people don't fully understand what it is. And so, but that, even knowing that, or even guessing that a kid that I would have taught becomes the next, superstar, or the next CEO, or the next nonprofit organization that helps find and support, other people, or even a kid that becomes president, or a kid that cures cancer, whatever. It's just the thought of that potential is just wonderful. And I think that's that passion that I have for those students. I think that's why it makes me a great educator. And the reason why I am interested in Anywhere Middle School is that I've heard a lot about what you guys are doing here when it comes to like PLC, focusing on good teaching and starting at what they need to know, and how can we build special lessons for them, and really cater that knowledge for the student, and the best practices in order to fulfill their needs and whatnot, and really drive into the data. So I've heard that you guys were really working on that, and I think that is a wonderful aspect to have on the campus. So that's why very much interested in Anywhere Middle School.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
At Anywhere Middle School, we have a team approach to everything.
For sure.
What personal strengths will you bring to our team?
So I think that one of my personal strengths that I have when it comes to teams is adaptability. I don't often fall to pressure. Usually when the pressure is on, I'm someone who is very calm, cool, collected, and making sure that everyone else can continue onwards and not freak out and not crumble under that type of pressure. You know, I think being adaptable to being a someone who can support, or someone who needs to lead, or someone who needs to organize. You know, I think that is something that I am able to do very, very well in. At the previous campuses that I've been at, I often would support organizing a variety of school events. Like in the last campus I was at a high school setting, so I helped organize homecoming and prom. I helped also organize a Halloween at the ballpark, is what we called it, where it wasn't at the baseball field, but it was basically a large community event where the variety of student organizations had booths, and the community came in their costumes, and there were little kids, there were kids in middle school, kids in elementary school, there were kids not even in school, and just having a good time at the school and getting candy and, you know, admiring other people's costumes, things like that. I was in charge of, I think, 3 booths there just because they were lacking a sponsor that could be there at the time, so I organized them to be they're basically in a section all together, so that way I could keep an eye on them, or bring extra candy bags if they needed it, or what have you. In another instance, I volunteered to be Santa during our holiday before finals events. So I dressed up as a Santa Claus and would walk around during lunch and during the passing periods, and that was super duper fun for basically everybody. The special education students really loved it. They were so happy to see me, and it really endeared my heart to see them in such a wonderful state and how happy they were. But at the same time, I've taken lead on a variety of clubs and organizations like Asian Student Association, the Men's Volleyball Club, and things like that. So being able to adapt to whatever is needed, I think, is a strength that I have when it comes to teams, because there are leaders, there are people who follow, but someone who can switch between as for what is demanded or what is needed, I think that's important too.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing those community events as well. Those sound like they brought a lot of kids to school, made school seem like an enjoyable place, not just somewhere where they have to come learn.
Yeah.
So that's really great to hear. All right, continuing on that, how do you continue to learn as a teacher?
So I think that even after you as a person finish high school or finish college, that we as human beings continuously grow no matter what. We are always learning something, whether that's learning something new on the news, learning about some new technology, learning about some new medicine or what have you. We're always learning about something and always trying to improve ourselves, and that's just kind of how human beings are. Me personally, as I continue to hone my craft of education, I always try to have some sort of self-reflection every marking period, every 9 weeks, and oftentimes at the end of the year, I will give out a survey to my own students, asking them how they thought their year went and what, if anything, that I could improve upon. And that one I do at the end of the year because, at the end of the year they're done. All the grades have been submitted, all the tests are done, and so there's no real worry about me having some sort of opinion upon them, if any. Like I'm not going to be biased whether a kid is honest or not, and then oftentimes the surveys are going to be anonymous anyway. But a self-reflection using those surveys allows me to see, using data again, what I could improve upon and what would benefit students, right? And so, and then also picking their brains on like how they are doing, because if there is something that they are lacking, maybe I can go in and support that as well. So the idea of self-reflection is also, super duper important. I also think that doing as many professional developments as I possibly can, and I'm sure your school provides some sort of professional development or some sort of development for the staff. Those I think are super helpful because of the fact that it can provide some sort of new avenue or new way of thinking or new way of educating. I'm trying to think. There was one professional development that I participated in. It was called QSSA or QSSSA. So you have a question, you have statements, you have a status, and then some answer, right? You propose a question, and whenever the students have thought of their answer, you have them do some sort of action. So there's a status, so like when you've thought of your answer, stand up, and then you ask them the question, you ask them their answers, and that just helps them to get them more accountable. And I learned that through a professional development. I not necessarily would have thought of to do that. You just ask a question, hopefully you get an answer, right? But with asking a question and then them doing a physical act of like, whether it's standing or raising their hand, it shows that they are prepared for an answer, and when I call on them, they have an answer to give, and it's not just crickets the entire time. So I think that's super cool, So the professional development, I think, really helps with personal growth, and just helps you be a better teacher overall. So.
Thank you.
How do you use assessment in the classroom?
So there are a wide variety of ways that I assess students. There's quick assessments where I would ask that, or whenever they are given some assignment or something like that, or even just asking a very brief question of like, repeating what I just said, or figuring out what knowledge did they receive in that instance. Like those are very, very quick. Like who was the king during the Revolutionary War, and then like we just went over this. Well, who was it? And then just doing repetition over and over again, so it really sticks into the mind. But quick assessments, it's just kind of quick questions of like asking them the information I just went over. We have these formal assessments that are like the assignments that I would grade. And and those I am looking for specific answers or specific pieces of information that I want to make sure that they have nailed down. And then we have the like summative assessments that summarize a whole unit. At least that's how I see things, right? You get a good chunk of information and they go through it, and that's basically their tests. Oftentimes in the past, I've done group tests. Group tests is something I actually learned in college because I was group tested upon, I suppose you could say. But in a sense, that you group up the students in groups of 3 is usually what I like to do, because 4 you get a gosh, what is it called? It's a free rider problem, right? You have a kid that just doesn't want to do much, but a group of 3 is usually really good. And I give them a test, and I give 3 copies, and all of them would do the test together as a group. And they would basically go through it. I'd give them like 20 minutes, 15 multiple choice questions, and they have to get through all of those in that amount of time. They're working together, and only one of those copies gets turned in. And it amazes me how much teamwork goes into these group quizzes whenever they realize they have 3 heads to work with. And so there are a lot of conversations that happen during that time between them, and saying like, it's not A because this X, Y, and Z, and then they go, it's not B because X, Y, and Z, and so it goes, well, and then the 2 other people in the group would agree or disagree, and they give each other reasons and whatnot. So it allows for these groups to have conversations about what the actual answer is, and not just brute memorization for the answers. Yeah, there's going to be memorization, but it gives conversation to each other, to the students, and so that really helps them. Gives me the assessment of me listening in on that these conversations, gives me that information of, oh, they actually do know the content. Another way, another aspect of quick assessment or assessing is when they are working through whatever assignment, like a daily assignment that I would give them, I just briefly look over and say like, hey, what are you writing there? Or hey, what did you, what are your thoughts on this information? Then whatever information they've given me, I can say, oh, well that's great, that's awesome, good job. Or I think there is a document that you can take a look at that might have clarification. So those are some of the avenues that I have given assessments, or use the data from the assessments to help improve the learning environment. So.
For those collaborative conversations and those group tests, how do you kind of collect that data in that moment?
So for those collaboration bits, it's oftentimes where I am gathering information. Like usually the group tests I have them do on a Scantron, and so once they are done with the Scantron, I take a look at it, grade it instantly. And I have this app called ZipGrade, and I basically take a picture of it and it scans it, and it tells me what's right or wrong. And I actually correct, or I mark the ones that they got wrong and give it back to them. And so when then they know, oh, these are the questions we got wrong. Let's figure out why we got these wrong, and let's find a better answer. And then they have another opportunity to, they check again with me, and then once they've gotten through all of their missed questions, then they would raise their hand, and then I'd come back and I'd mark it again, or great job, good job. I mean, those still missed points, but nevertheless, they have essentially done test corrections doing such a thing, right? And getting that instant feedback, even on a test, that sometimes could take a lot longer oftentimes takes longer to give back to them. So utilizing the collection of group tests is very helpful for getting instant feedback for them.
Alright. Middle school students are a special group,
Yes, they are.
and capturing their attention can be difficult.
Sure.
How will you ensure engagement in your classroom?
I think that is a difficult thing to do, especially in middle school, mainly because they are going through all sorts of things. You know, they're trying to discover who they are. They're trying to discover who each other are, and going through a very wild time in their life. But to have a successful classroom, you need to have successful lessons. Lessons need to be engaging. How they are engaging is you do a couple of things. You pique their interest, making it to where the content seems like it matters to them more, or it is related to current things. That is something that can potentially work. Now, not every lesson is going to be super off the wall, amazing. There are going to be some lessons that are just gotta get through. But I think that with a team, developing engaging lessons, or at least lessons that pique ever so slight interest for students, it makes it a little bit easier rather than developing things on your own. Even if you're the only teacher doing said subject matter, you can always ask your team in the same content area of like, what have they done to figure out to create engaging lessons. I also think that in order to create an engaging lesson, there needs to be some buy-in for a kid. Like, why do they have to learn this? Or what impact does this information have on me? And that can be difficult, especially when it comes to social studies, because social studies, a lot of people think it's just talking about dead people or people in the past. But interestingly enough, what happens in the past oftentimes continues or has lasting impacts on us today, or we find it that it is repeating itself again. And so they just don't necessarily realize it. And they also don't realize that when it comes to like history specifically, that they often are living through history, they just don't realize it. So them understanding that could potentially be a buy-in or a way of engagement. I also think that utilizing discussions, having them be the one to teach in a sense, or having them be the one to discuss, leads to a higher engagement because it allows them to speak their mind or come up with an answer for a question. And when it comes to discussions, it gives them an opportunity to, discuss with a peer and not me, right? And also, the best way to learn about something is to teach it, because if you can teach it to somebody else, then you have, in a sense, and they can understand it, you have, in a sense, mastered that content. So if they are able to discuss and talk to each other about whatever the subject matter is, there's probably going to be a higher chance or higher likelihood that they're going to remember it and be engaged while doing it. I read a book recently that talked about classroom engagement, and one of the aspects that they had to do in the book was stand, because standing, and walking around, standing allows blood flow to continuously move through the body, and that can keep a kid awake whenever they are feeling tired. And so the idea of standing and utilizing the room on these questions, like asking them their opinion on an action that was done, or a political cartoon or a executive order that was conducted or what have you, some political issue or whatever, and have them move to a different side of the room, or that can, it's causing them to move, it's causing them to think about their actions, and then it can definitely increase that engagement.
So say you have taught a lesson.
Sure.
92% of your learners have mastered all the concept. What is your approach to the other 8% of those learners?
So that can happen, absolutely. And I think utilizing tiered instruction would be a really, really useful thing there. Or I think it's also known as small group. But basically, kids who got it, who've mastered it, or who have complete understanding of that content, they are, I guess, in a sense, tier one, right? They're the best. They're the ones that understand it. Kids, now 92%, not all of them are necessarily going to master it, so it's probably going to be more like a bell curve, right? But nevertheless, the 8% that didn't quite get it, I would pull them aside and we'd do small groups. And I would give a small group instruction with them. So that way they are, where we can figure out what is it they are missing, what is it that they could possibly need for them to fully understand this concept. And if there is a lot of, of kids, right? If there's more than I need, like small group isn't 8 kids. That's a pretty big group, right? So I would split it up with me and then another student who has fully mastered the content. And I would have them help me teach another group of kids, and then even more so break that down to where I wouldn't be even involved at all, and I would have other kids, again, teaching the smaller groups, because again, being able to teach something and have full knowledge of it and someone understanding you on that information really shows that you have learned that content. So by breaking up into small groups, you allow the kids who are behind to learn what or figure out what is missing, and then you give the students who have mastered the information an extra chance to reinforce that information into their brains. So I think that is a way that I would go about helping that last 8% to master whatever content that I'm giving.
Right, this one has a few parts,
Okay.
so you're gonna hear from me a
Sure,
couple
absolutely.
of times. To start, a student begins being disruptive and interfering with your ability to deliver instruction.
Sure.
What do you do?
I think part of that I would need to understand what the discipline policy is for the campus. In my previous campuses, we did we had, what's it called? Essentially it's like strikes or striking out, where you would have, in a sense, 3 opportunities, or at least you are giving, we are not giving punishment because we want to, we are giving punishment in response to their action. So you are giving the student the understanding that it is their actions that have caused the consequences. So if, taking an example from my previous school, if we were conducting strikes, we would, or clean slate is what it was called, right? They are disruptive, they get a strike 1 for stateless talking, strike 1 talking. And if they put up a fit of like, what, I wasn't talking, then it's like strike 2 talking. Or they stay quiet and then they're on task. But if they to talking or distracting another person or kid or whatever, then strike two, and then I would give them a warning. If you receive one more strike, you will get strikes. Now, I don't know if you guys do clean slate, but again, I would need to know what your discipline policy is. But in my previous school, we sent them to strike zone. Actually, they go into strike three, and we had dedicated people come and grab kids, because it used to be when we sent them over to strike zone, sometimes kids didn't find themselves in strike zone. So we stopped that, stopped sending them down, and we basically created a Google form or submitted a Google form, and they came, picked up the kid, and then they brought down to strike zone. Now, in strike zone, it's not necessarily it's them being punished, but it's them understanding as to why they're being punished, right? We have them can't do anything. They can't get on their phones, can't on their computers, whatever. The only thing they're going to do is read and wait for their parent to come to the school. And the reason why that's important is because their actions are impacting other people who care about them, and people who would be pretty frustrated at the fact that they had to leave their own work to handle a problem, right? So it's trying to get them to understand why. And so after that, we call the parent comes up, and they have a conversation with the students, like, this is what they did, this is what happened, and this is why they are here. And so they would hopefully understand that their actions impacted the classroom environment, their parent coming to the school in order to miss out on work, and having to go through that punishment. And once that happened, once they had a parent conference, they would come back to class. And now they would also understand that they had missed some sort of class, because sometimes the parent doesn't come until the next period or the end of the day or whatnot. So they have essentially missed quite a chunk of time. So utilizing clean slate was the way that I've done discipline, because it was very easy. Because after the first week of clean slate, kids knew that their behavior disrupting others is not fair, right? It's like, you absolutely can, defend yourself or fight for your rights, but the moment you inhibit another person's rights, you've lost yours, because you are preventing another person from living their life, right? So I think the motto for Clean Slate was, no one has the, what was it? In a sense, like, everyone has the ability to learn, and no one can prevent you from learning. And so by being disruptive, you are preventing other people from learning. Now, we've evolved that to include yourself, right? You cannot prevent yourself from learning, or you prevent yourself from being a good student. And so again, that actions, their actions would inhibit them from learning. And so that's how I've dealt with the disciplinary policy in the past. But again, I think it kind of boils down to what the campus policy is. But personally, I've not had a lot of issues in my classrooms, mainly because that first week, or at least the first couple days, I spend a lot of time building this relationship, building this rapport with students, and having them understand that I am on their side, and whatever issues that they may have, we can talk about it. And if it's an issue that's not with me, but they are angry because they're just venting that anger or frustration towards me, then I completely understand that. Let's just talk about it and let's figure that out. And I can't do that until this rapport has been built in the beginning of school. So.
Okay, well, my next parts were 3 minutes later, same behavior, 5 minutes later, same behavior. And so
Sure.
I feel as though you answered that.
Yeah, utilizing things like is basically how we would deal with multiple disruptions. And it just made it easier because, the first time, all right, you had to talk to your friend real quick because something came up in your mind. Second time, all right, you can wait. Third time, it's like you're doing it intentionally. There's something going on that we can't have, and so that's why Clean Slate is so, in a sense, powerful and to utilize.
Thank you.
How do you go about designing lessons?
So me personally, or at least in the past, I've always had a team, or at least a content team, social studies, right? I wasn't always on a team with people, like for a specific subject matter. So like in this case, if I was on the social studies team and I taught US history, hopefully someone else is teaching US history, and we would bounce off ideas off of each other on trying to figure out what we've done in the past, what worked, what didn't work, how can we make it more engaging, looking at data, things like that. Now, if I was by myself, because that has happened before, being by myself does not necessarily mean I'm like not going to develop the best lessons, because I still utilize all of the people on my content area because they have taught a subject that will impact mine. Or if they taught, like they previously, like Texas history, they have taught the kids that I'm teaching, so I can ask them what successes did they find when it comes to teaching these kids. And so when it comes to developing a lesson, it is really trying to find engaging lessons that can give students the opportunity to discuss, speak their mind, and have an opinion, and give the ownership of that knowledge to them. So that way they are the ones, not necessarily in control, but in charge of their learning. So that way it's not me being the great sage, but more of just being a tour guide of, hey, this is what it is. Let's take a look deeper, and what do you guys think about the deeper knowledge there? So creating engaging lessons, utilizing teams, or utilizing others and how they have taught is super vital in creating good lessons. And then just trying to find what's out there, taking a look at other content and what activities that they used in the content, and how I could change that and put a US history spin on it, or looking for softwares or programs or games to gamify something, to get it to where they would review a little bit better, because kids love games nowadays, so or what have you. So something of the sort like that.
Okay, that comes to the end of our questions. Do you have any questions for us?
Sure. Earlier I talked about professional development, how I like to utilize that for my own growth. What kind of professional development opportunities do you guys provide at Anywhere Middle School?
Yeah, absolutely. We mentioned that team aspect and us doing everything as a team here at this campus.
Yeah.
So we host campus-led professional development every week, once a week, every week, with your content area team. Like you said, you get that peer experience, you get to grow with one another. And so we have that as one avenue, with some of those being led by ourselves, our instructional coaches, our teacher leaders. Maybe they listened to a podcast or read a book and they're really excited about something and want to bring it to their team. So we have that as an opportunity. We also have district opportunities regularly throughout the year. And we recently started professional learning cohorts
Oh, okay.
to build in some choice. Those are led and facilitated by teachers, and you kind of just get to, in a smaller group, dive into what you're interested in, as long as it all relates to Tier 1 instruction. That's the only requirement for those cohorts.
Yeah.
So that's really how we support professional development,
Nice.
because we know that as you grow, our students will grow and benefit.
Nice, so it's really like teachers having the opportunity to do it, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
Now I know you guys, so you're the principal and you're an AP,
Mhm.
so I'm assuming you guys handle a lot of the disciplinary things when it gets to you. What does your typical day look like? Are you guys handling disciplinary frequently? Are you running around the building trying to get things done? What does a typical day look like for you?
Yeah, I think it definitely depends on the day of the week. Wednesdays, you'll find us camped out in our data room, meeting with teams and having those MTSS discussions about our student data. We do our best to be in the hallways during passing periods and in and out of classrooms so that we can give you feedback as much as possible in conjunction with our coaches who are coming from a less evaluative stance. And then we do deal with behavior, and there are pockets of the school year where there's more, but we try to balance those. We try to deal with them in a timely manner so that those students can get back to your classroom and get back to learning when appropriate, and in a timely manner so that, Mr. Salerno, myself can be accessible to teachers and accessible to students that might need our support. But yes, we're definitely campus forward. We do our best to protect our time when it comes to district obligations, so we do have meetings we have to go to, trainings, things like that. But we prioritize being seen by our teachers because it's essential to our campus culture,
Nice. Cool. That's really all the questions I got. So
Yeah.
it's good to know that you guys do a lot for your campus and provide a lot, and you are seen. I think that's really, really important for leadership, because if leaders aren't seen, it's like, who's leading? So that's awesome.
Thank you. Are you sure you don't have any other questions for us?
Let me think real quick. I guess what, if any, are expectations for like lesson planning? Does the district provide the lessons, or is it more like I would be creating lessons in conjunction with my team, or is it by myself? How does that work?
So our district provides UBDs, so with
Okay.
teacher support, they've got those, and that we use kind of as the starting point and springboard, because we are given a good deal of autonomy in our district.
That's great.
So you would start with that, and then with your content team, we have a planning process that takes you through those stages to make sure that you're starting with the end in mind, pooling your resources and knowledge to build the best lesson that's engaging and extending and has those tiers that you were talking about. So it's a little bit of a mixture of both. It's definitely not, here is your lesson plan for the whole year, do it. And we also, we just ask that those are housed in a common space
So
digitally.
everyone's able to utilize that information
Absolutely.
and build off of it. That's
Yes.
nice. That's awesome.
And so that when we come in for walkthroughs, we have access to it, we know what we're,
What to expect when
Yes.
you look into a classroom.
so we don't have to interrupt you or the students.
Right. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right, well, we've got a few more candidates we have to interview,
Okay.
but I will let you know by the end of this week, whether we are moving forward with you or another candidate, just so you know your next steps as well as our next steps.
Fantastic.
But we really appreciate your time. Thank you for sharing all of your knowledge with us today.
Yeah.
And I look forward to talking to you soon.
Yeah. Look forward to the call.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.